all earlier 3 points, we have seen the different revolts on different places, and different governments came in a force. In this part, different part of the revolution we are going to see. The picture here we are looking, this is the picture of Persian women on their way to Versailles. The women are here on their way to the Versailles. They are depicted having different tools in their hand and led by one. This is the picture. This shows the participation of women in the revolution. How they participated and what they worked, we will see. From the very beginning, women were active participants in the event which brought about so many important changes in French society. If you remember, the storming of the shop by the women on the same day of the storming of Bastille. So it can give us idea since first day, as from earlier, the women were participated in the revolution of the French, and they brought many changes, important changes in the French society. They hoped that their involvement would pressurize the revolutionary government to introduce measures to improve their lives. The women were participated because they hope this revolutionary government will bring changes in the life of the women. Most women of the third estate had to work for a living. From third estate, most women were working to earn. They worked as seamstresses or laundresses, sold flowers, fruits, and vegetables at the market, or were employed as a domestic servant in the houses of prosperous people. Different works were done by the women of the third estate. May they worked in the laundry, may as a domestic worker, or selling fruits or flowers. Kind of these many works were done by the women for earning for their families. Most women did not have access to education or job training. The women were not having access to the education and the job training. Only daughters of noble or wealthier members of the third estate could study at a convent. The daughters of noble and wealthier families were allowed to study in the convent, after which their families arranged a marriage for them. After that education, the families were arranged a marriage. Working women had also to care for their families. The working woman who is working outside, it is not only one work for her, but she must take care of her family also. So on both front, she was fighting. That is, cook, fetch water, queue up for bread, and look after the children. Their wages were lower than those of men. The same thing is happening from ancient time anywhere in the world, whether it is India, whether it is America, whether it is France. In France also, the differences were in the wages of the men and women. Women were getting less wages than the men. In order to discuss and voice their interest, women started their own political clubs and newspapers. To raise their voice, these women came together, formed organizations, formed a club to discuss their matter, to raise their voice. Political clubs and newspapers own made by the women. About 60 women's clubs camp up in a different French cities. In a different French cities, about 60 women clubs were working. The Society of Revolutionary and Republican Women was the most famous of them. Among that group, the Society of Revolutionary and Republican Women was the most famous of them. One of their main demand was that women enjoy the same political rights as men. The main demand from the many demands was that they should get political right because they were working and they were new the changes what happening in the France. Women were disappointed that the Constitution of 1791 reduced them to passive citizens. Women were disappointed with the Constitution 1791 because this Constitution made them passive citizens. It means the women were not having right to vote and elect their government. They demanded the right to vote. Women were demanding right to vote to be elected to the assembly and hold political office. To be elected to the assembly and hold political office. Only then they felt would their interest be represented in the new government. When women will get right to vote, that time only their problems will be represented in the government, in a new government. That was the thought of the women. That is why these women were asking for the political rights. These women were disappointed with the Constitution 1791 because Constitution 1791 made all women as a passive citizens, and all passive citizens were not having right to vote and elect the government. This was the story of France women. Maybe from earlier they were working as a revolutionary. Not only as a revolutionary, these women were taking responsibility of the family and earning also for the family needs. In the early years of revolutionary, government did introduce laws that helped improve the lives of women. When revolutionary government came in force, in the early years, this government introduced some laws which improve the lives of the women. Together with the creation of state schools, schooling was made compulsory for all girls. In the revolutionary government, schooling was made compulsory to the all girls. Their father could not longer force them into marriage against their will. Their father could not force to her marry against of her will. Marriage was made into a contract entered into freely and registered under civil law. The marriage was made into a contract entered into freely and registered under civil law. In the civil law, it made compulsory registration of the marriage. Divorce was made legal. The divorce also made legal. The marriage should be legal and divorce also should be legal. And could be applied for both women and men. Both men and women can be apply for the divorce. Women could not train for jobs, could become artists or run small business. Women could now train for jobs and could become artists or run small business. So the new revolutionary government brought some changes in the lives of the women. This government made compulsory education to all girls. This government brought some civil laws also which protect to the woman. The marriage against her will should not make, and these women were getting training education so that they can establish their own shop or can become artisan. So in this way, some changes brought by the revolutionary government in the lives of the women. But the struggle for the equal political right remained continued. The political right did not get to them. Women's struggle for equal political right, however, continued. The political right did not get this woman, that is why it remained continued. During the reign of terror, the new government issued laws ordering closure of women's club and banning their political activities. In the reign of terror, Robespierre's period, the law was made which orders to close the political clubs of the women. Ban were brought on the political clubs and their political activities. Many prominent women were arrested and a number of them executed. Those who were leading there to the women political activities, they were arrested and executed. Women's movement for voting right and equal wages continued through the next 200 years in many countries of the world. After the long struggle, these women got right to vote, but they made long struggle. Nowadays, women are getting right to vote very easily. In India, Indian women got right to vote very easily, but for it, the long struggle was made in a different countries. There is example of America, France. In America, like or in France also, women did not get easily right to vote. So next 200 years, since it was the 1791, then 18th century, 19th century, in the 20th century, these women got right to vote. More than 200 years, women spent to get the right to vote in the developed country also. About it, somehow we are going to study in the democratic politics. Through the next 200 years, in many countries of the world, the fight for the vote was carried out through an international suffrage movement during the late 19th century and early 20th century. The example of the political activities of French women during the revolutionary years was kept alive as an inspiring memory. It was finally in 1946 that women in France won the right to vote before 1 year of the India. In India, right to vote got to Indian women with the help of with getting freedom. So in this way, we have seen how the women suffered, struggled to make their lives better and to bring changes to get political rights, to change the government or to represent themselves. Actually, women got right to vote, but the representation now also not getting. Women are denied to get their rights or to represent themselves in the parliament, in the assembly. The proportion of women representation in a parliament and assembly is a very low. This picture shows us in the 21st century also people are not ready to give right to the women. In this part we are looking the participation of women in the revolution, their work and what treatment they got. When we are looking the part, we came to know who led the women revolution that did not get peaceful life or what treatment they got. We will see here. The example is here. In the source E it is given. The very important lady, woman who worked to bring the changes in the woman life, the life of the revolutionary woman. The example is given Olympide Gorges. Olympide Gorges was one of the most important of the political active women in the revolutionary France. She was one of the most active political leader of the women in the France. She protested against the constitution and the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizen and they excluded women from basic rights that each human being was entitled to. She protested, Olympide Gorges protested against of the Constitution and the Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizens as they excluded, kept away, kept far from the rights. That is why she protested against of the Constitution. In 1791, the Constitution was came. Again, she wrote, in 1791, she wrote a Declaration of Rights of Women and Citizen. she herself written for the women, the rights of women and citizen, which she addressed to the Queen and to the members of the National Assembly, demanding that they act upon it. In 1793, the Olympic Gorges criticized the Jacobin government also for forcibly closing down women's club. She addressed her rights to women to the Queen and the National Assembly. She also protested against of the Jacobin government, which government closed the political clubs and the political activities of the women. After this activity, she tried by the court as in the case of the treason, and same case executed. Rights to women, what she got here, written there, Olympic Gorges. Some of the basic rights set forth in Olympic Gorges Declaration. Woman is born free and remains equal to man in rights. In her rights declaration, she written here, women are free, women born free and remains equal. They are equal as a man in all rights. The goal of political associations is the preservation of natural rights of women and man. Woman and man. These rights are liberty, property, security, and above all resistance to the oppression. This is the second right declared by the Olympic Gorges for the women. The source of all sovereignty reside in the nation, which is nothing but the union of woman and man. In a nation, all men and women will live equally. They are source of the nation. The law should be the expression of the general will. All female and male citizens should have a say, either personally or by their representative, in its formulation. It should be the same for all. All female and male citizens are equally entitled to all honors and public employment according to their abilities and without any other distinction than that of their talent. On the base of talent, she should get job and she should get wages. This is said through this declaration. No woman is an exemption. No woman is an exemption. Don't give exemption to her also. She is accused, arrested, and detained in cases determined by law. Women, like men, obey these rigorous laws, which laws are compulsory to the all men. That same should be the women also. These are the declaration of the laws or the rights by the Olympic Gorges for the women. This is same picture is showing how women were queuing in the bakery. This is another thing. Maybe now you will think it is a shocking, but people were against of the women's revolution and their activities. How they claim here, the people from the Jacobin politician. In 1793, the Jacobin politician Chomity sought to justify the closure of women's clubs on the following ground. When Jacobin government closed women's club, the justification were given by the member of the Jacobin politics or the party. Has nature entrusted domestic duties to men? Has she given us breast to nurture babies? Nature not are entrusted only to the women for the domestic duties, and she given breast to nurture babies to the women only, not men. No, she said to man, be a man. What nature said to man? It is about nature saying, nature, it is claiming nature made differences. Why should we make same? We have to follow the nature. Be a man, it said to the man. Be a man, hunting, agriculture, political duties, that is your kingdom. And this nature said to woman, be a woman, the things of the household, the sweet duties of motherhood, those are you your task. Shameless are those women who wish to become men. Have not duties been fairly distributed? The duties are fairly distributed by nature only. So why should we make changes? This is the justification by the member of Jacobin politician. So we have seen in this part the participation and women in the revolution and what treatment they got by the different governments and how long women fought to get the political rights for them.